Hey Alison, hey Boyd, this is Carrie Kibbler. I'm the curator at Hazelhurst. Thanks so much for joining me today for our interview series of artists from Southern Sydney and inviting me into your studio so I can see what you've been doing at home. I thought I might just invite you to introduce yourselves and you can tell me a little bit about what you've been doing over the past few months.
I'm Alison Clouston. This is...
I'm Boyd, and this is Alison Clouston.
We're already kind of reeling from the drought and the bushfires. So I've sort of picked up on some of the work that I was doing before that was about drought, that's been an ongoing thing, using animal bones that I've collected. So I've been meticulously cleaning up ribs and femurs and tibias, and you can probably just see a bone building there behind Boyd. And there's another one here coming. So the scale of them is determined by the length of a tibia or a femur of a kangaroo, and Eastern Grey is the biggest, but there's sort of wombat bones in there as well.
I've been doing a lot of Zoom teaching music, and also doing some improvising on Zoom, which has been quite interesting. I have a group, the Monday Club, I go and play with on Mondays. Next week, for the first time, some of us will be coming out of hibernation and actually getting together and doing some playing, which will be really nice. In Bundina, there's all the community bands that I'd normally go and play with, the Monday Club. And then there's the face-to-face teaching. So all that's been sort of sucked onto the internet and kind of compressed into this little app where you've got these funny little screens that you've got to try and look at, and people lose all their bandwidth because they forgot to turn off their Xbox in the background, or someone's trying to watch a movie, or have another Zoom meeting in the next room.
Your studio looks amazing at the moment. What can I see in the background?
It's steel and speaker wire, part of a show that hasn't toured after all, delivered back just at the start of COVID lockdown. It's our Mirikiana installation about a little endangered dragon lizard for out of threatened species. An exhibition with 10 threatened species, 10 scientists, 10 artists.
And you were in another exhibition that was on the Cross-Up Projects in Sydney that also was impacted by the COVID pandemic as well, and the gallery closures. Can you tell us a little bit about that exhibition and the work that's in that?
It was working with Ilcha Ntiara, which is many hands. So they're based around what was called Hermansburg. So Indigenous artists working about environmental issues on their lands. And Jack Green, who's from up in nearer to the top end, plus Fiona McDonald, plus Boyd and I. And it just felt really great to be part of it. And we'd just been making a little video about the use of these masks I'd made. The last time there was a mass gathering on the streets of Sydney for the National Day of Climate Action.
A number of years ago we worked on a project based in Bimblebox Nature Refuge, which is in West Queensland. It's threatened by a big huge coal mine Clive Palmer wants to build, and so the sound that I decided to use for this project was the dawn chorus from Bimblebox Nature Refuge. Then the sound of the actual demonstration itself came in over some footage of Bimblebox Nature Refuge.
For our audience, they may remember seeing your work at Hazelhurst before. So I curated an exhibition in 2016 which was called Wonder. It was contemporary art for children, and you contributed this incredible installation. It was this phenomenal sculpture that was suspended from the ceiling with these just incredible both musical and animal noises.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us to do that. It was a really fun project. We loved it. It was a lot of hard yakka, but it was so great.
Wonderful to be working with the both of you. And really, you had inspired that whole exhibition. The whole project came about after seeing your work from 2002, I think, which was Magical Goland, Elizabeth Bay House. But thinking about your practice and that work in particular, and other work that you've been making. It has a real social aspect to it, but there's also a lot of engagement with other artists or other musicians that you're working with. So in a time when we can't be in physical contact with people or have people engaging with our artworks physically, how have the social distancing measures affected your practice and the way that you're working now?
Yeah, I kept on hoping that I would have more time in the studio, actually, more quiet time in the studio. But actually, in fact, we've been really busy on all sorts of things. So we did sort of, quite early on, we thought, you know, we really should be growing more food because we had a vegetable garden and we've got our chooks. But we really wanted to get going on that. So I noticed one of your questions was, what have we been eating? And we've been eating a huge amount of homegrown food, like either from here or from the community garden. And we've got our chooks. And Boyd's been, you know, he's got the sourdough, so he makes all our bread. And you've been doing lots of pickling
and kefir, and all the things that allow you to go mouldy and, you know, taste good and supposed to be good for you. Do you want to talk about the Candos project?
Yeah, so what are you working on for it?
To address that sort of heartbreak of the loss of trees, you know, we were talking about the fires and the drought, and actually on that wild patch of bush which we're still involved with in the Burragorang Valley in the southern Blue Mountains, we're feeling it really deeply that a lot of the trees that haven't survived are the big old giant trees, the ones that are full of those homes for animals, you know. Like a lot of that regrowth young eucalypt forest will regenerate quite well, but we've lost the giant old trees, and it's heartbreaking. And we were sure that everybody around Candos would be feeling the same sense of loss and grief. And yeah, it was really hard for the people at Candos to try and imagine organising a festival that's all about socially engaged art when we're in this age of social distancing.
So it's working towards the residency there, which will be later in the year, probably.
By then, maybe there'll be a bit more clarity.
I think we're all hoping for a bit more clarity by November.
Yeah.
Why do you think art and artists are important during the current global crisis?
I was really moved by something that Catherine Truman, the artist from Adelaide, did early on in the isolation period. She did this really beautiful little video work with her hands, and her hands were like puppets, and they were sort of communicating towards each other, like sometimes distancing and sometimes embracing each other. You can see it online, and she sort of talked about how maybe artists have got something to show the rest of the community about the difference between solitude and loneliness. And perhaps artists are quite good at solitude, and perhaps we're quite good at being self-motivated and finding ways of getting on with things, that we're always interested in being creators rather than consumers.
And I suppose I was starting to think about how when you're confined, life becomes much more simple in a sense. You're at home and hopefully there's some nature you can look at out the window. So you start maybe looking at things and appreciating things that are simple things in life, like birds and the nature. That's what you hope.
Yeah, which was what made us feel very lucky, you know, because imagine being somewhere where you don't have clean water to wash your hands, or you don't have a roof over your head, or if you do, you're crowded with 20 other family members. You know, we did feel really fortunate. Yeah.
And there's so many situations across the globe where that is people's reality.
Yeah.
Are there any particular artists, aside from Catherine, that you've been looking at during this time, and why?
I've really loved looking at Nonginya Muruwili. She's an artist who had a solo show at the art gallery last year, and her work turned up again in the Biennale in Niran. And
I'm a huge fan of her work. Absolutely massive fan of her work. I think she's incredible.
Isn't she amazing? I just love the way she's totally grounded in her tradition, and yet she's completely new and fresh and unique as well. Yeah, she's really something, isn't she?
Yep. We can't visit galleries at the moment, but there are many digital resources online. Is there a virtual exhibition, gallery, blog, or perhaps an Instagram account that you would recommend to our viewers, and why?
Coronacast. I've been using the gallery sites a bit, you know, like looking at the Biennale, because we didn't get to see the Biennale before it locked down. That's been good, you know, like I look at art online, but especially sculpture, it's just, you've got to, and especially installation sculpture, you really got to be there and amongst it. And, you know, when Boyd does a sound installation, it's like there's a sound from over there, and then you turn your head and there's a sound from way over there, and then the sound falling on your head, and, you know, you've got to be there, don't you? So it is a poor substitute. And I hope we never get to the point where, you know, that's how most art is consumed, you know, online.
I think the Australian Chamber Orchestra are doing some wonderful concerts where they're playing, the individual musicians are playing in their own homes. That's something really beautiful about that. And I know there's a Sydney Improvised Music Association are putting on concerts where now bands can actually get together, albeit without an audience. They're streaming those too, which is great.
Well, I'm currently sitting in a very empty painting studio at Hazelhurst, and we can't wait to be welcoming everyone back here to visit exhibitions and take an art class and spend some time in our beautiful grounds. So artists are great at being adaptive and creative. What's one positive that you and perhaps others can take away from our current situation?
I think for me it's that idea of living a bit more simply without so much consumption, and just looking and listening to the world around you and being able to hear it. So
yeah, I think quite a few artists have voiced this, that, you know, if we can see world governments, you know, like NGOs, we can see governments all around the world, we can see people making these huge adaptations to a crisis. Why can't we do this for climate change? Why not? You know, we've seen governments like order manufacturers to retool so that they can make ventilators instead of something else. We can see everything from, you know, big manufacturers right down to little citizens groups with sewing machines making masks. You know, we can see huge government expenditure on changing the way we go about our lives. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to keep this. We've got a big reduction already in our emissions, and at huge human cost. And the human cost is not over yet. You know, the struggle is ahead, and all the most vulnerable, the poor people, the countries that don't have good health systems, the vulnerable communities like our Indigenous communities in this country, they're the ones that we've got to watch out for. But we should take something positive from this, I hope. I hope, like Boyd said, that we realise we can live without this massive busyness. That you know, I remember, I think it was Ian Millis who quoted somebody, an Italian theorist and philosopher, who said that maybe the most radical thing, and he said this before COVID, maybe the most radical thing we can do now is to do less. You know, to stop jumping on airplanes and rushing to and fro, where we feel like we have to compensate our stressed and anxious lives with consumption of stuff. That's what I hope that we can, and that's not to underplay the suffering that it has been, we have seen, and we are going to continue to see.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think, I think that's definitely one thing we can hope for. Yeah. Yeah. A big shift on the way that we're looking at climate.
There was a great quote too that I read, the pessimism of the intellect, but the optimism of the will. I've got to be optimistic. And I think art making is part of that optimism, that creating is a kind of hopeful act, like planting seeds is too.
I think that's really well said.